In a world that can be challenging, and at times unpredictable, it's hard to find moments to focus on what you need. Join Stephanie James on The Spark as she guides you to use your inner flame to ignite your best life. As a best-selling author, psychotherapist, transformational life coach, and international show host, Stephanie is dedicated to helping you create a life that takes you, your goals, and your passions to the next level, so you can live a life that is fully lit up and fully alive. She believes that your life is meant to be a beautiful expression of the things that light you up. That by living your dreams, you give permission to others to do the same. Are you ready to feel alive and inspired to fuel your dreams and put a fire behind your desires? Let's ignite a spark in one another that will illuminate the world. The Spark, with your host Stephanie James, starts now.
I'll welcome everyone to The Spark. I'm already here chatting with the wonderful Alvin Williams, who's a stand-up comedian, been doing it since 2008. Is that right?
Yeah, 2007, July 3rd, 2007 was the first time I was on a stage.
Okay. Well, and because I was watching a little bit of the show, It's Gonna Get Better on Amazon Prime. I did.
Awesome.
And so I knew, and for those of you that don't know, that's Alvin's special that you can watch on Amazon Prime, and I think a couple other venues as well, right?
Yes, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, YouTube, even Google Play, I believe, has it available as well. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
I didn't even have to plug it. You're awesome.
Well, because I was struck because in the beginning you were talking about your playing in the theater that you started in.
Yes.
Is that right?
Are you talking about when I was first? That was the place where I did my very first stand-up special. Was the place, or I'm sorry, the place where I performed my very first open mic was the place that I did my stand-up special. So that comedy club is of such significance to me, especially now, because that club is no longer, that club is gone. After the pandemic, they completely switched their business model and they turned into a pool hall. Like, they're super successful, but they're just not a comedy club anymore. And so it became this time capsule of how amazing that place was. So now it's immortal.
Yeah, how cool, because what a special thing. And I love, will you share the story that you share of literally how that came to be?
Yes. Are you talking about when my first open mic that I was at? Yes, absolutely. So I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy when I came out of college. And I was at a sushi restaurant with my friend, and we were just talking about how we had both come from University of Idaho, and we had internships over the summer, and we were having sushi, having a little sake with it. And I was like, you know what I've always wanted to do, and I'm old enough now, is I want to go to a comedy club and see a comedy show. And she said, well, there's one right across the street. And I literally looked out the window and there's a comedy club right there. And I'm like, we got to go to that. So it was a Wednesday and I went, and I remember everybody on the show was so bad. And I didn't understand what an open mic was. I had never been in that culture. So I didn't realize these were just regular people trying to start doing stand-up for the first time. And I thought I was watching professional comedians just be awful for an hour straight. And I'm like, is this stand-up comedy? Like, I could do this. And I had the courage from watching them. I went up to the manager and said, hey, can I try this? How do I try it? And he said, well, if you want to try it, we have another open mic next week. I'll give you 3 minutes. And this part is so crucial that when I went there and I did the 3 minutes, people laughed. But had they not laughed, I never would have did it again. I never would have done stand-up, because it feels really difficult until people start laughing. Even 15 years later, it still feels that way until you get your first laugh and you're like, all right, we're good. We're ready to go. But I just there's some people who would have that moment and go, well, I'm just going to work hard and I'm going to try harder and they can't beat me down. No, I would have quit. I would have been out of there.
Yeah.
I'm like, yep, stand-up's hard. I tried it. It's on my bucket list and I did it, but they laughed and it changed my entire life.
It was just like a bug. All of a sudden it was just like, I caught it and man, I got to get it. I got to keep getting
You
this.
couldn't have written it in a story any better than that night. I met so many people that night because I was just in Boise, Idaho for the first time. I didn't know anybody. So when I went there, immediately I had this huge group of people that I knew, the other open micers. And the people who were filming, there was a group of people that were filming that night, and they were just starting their film company. And I met the 4 people who were doing it, and we became the best of friends. And fast forward 13 years later, that's the guy who produced my special.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, he grew his film company and went out to LA and was part of a lot of other big movies. And then he was the one who was like, hey, I mean, 13 years later, he reached out to me and was like, I wanna film your special. And everything just came full circle from that moment. So that's why that place holds such a special place in my heart. In Boise, that whole scene, like I'll never forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can tell when you're on stage too. You can tell that you're glowing and you're soaking it in and you're loving it. I think you even say something about that. But it's
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. I just got done showing somebody the special when I was on the ship, and they are from a different country. They're from Ukraine. And we spent so much time together because she loves comedy. She's super funny. She's super funny in English. And a lot of people don't understand, if somebody makes you laugh in their second language, do you have any idea how hilarious they are in their native language? Do you realize how funny that person is? You know how hard it is to make somebody laugh in a different language than your own? So when they are funny to you in English, imagine what it's like if you knew Russian or spoke Ukrainian. So like I started to try to learn some of her language because I just wanted to know, like, how funny are you?
Because I think
right?
you're pretty funny, but
yeah, I'm like, we could work on something together. So she really loves comedy, and she was showing me comedy from Ukraine. And I don't know if you know this, but I think it's the either president or prime minister, I forget what the title is, for the main guy in Ukraine, was a comedian. And he got into politics, and then he became their guy. I think it's president. I think.
okay.
But imagine it would be as if Jon Stewart became president of the United States. That's what happened in Ukraine with this guy. And I was dumbfounded by how much I understood without knowing the language from watching them do comedy skits and stand-ups. Now she would interpret it for me, but I told her a couple of times, I'm like, hey, chill. Like I'm just watching. Like I'm enjoying it, because stand-up is so much more about energy than it is the words, that I was just trying to pick up on. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, great. No, this is great.
Well, in stand-up, if a comedian is watching someone do stand-up, they aren't watching it like a fan. They're watching it like a musician who knows how to read the notes. So you are watching it and studying it differently than your average onlooker. So even though you might not understand what they're saying, you understand the pacing. You understand, is he making them laugh every 8 seconds, every 12 seconds? Does he wait between jokes? So I'm watching that type of form, and it was almost identical to US stand-up, the mannerisms and everything. So it's like, all I'm missing is the language at this point. If I get that, like we're good.
Heck yeah.
So I did the same thing for her with my special. I was right there. She needed anything interpreted. She understands English really well, but I was there just in case there were parts that she needed from me. So I really got better at stand-up just from watching other people in other countries do it. It was amazing.
Well, and I love it because there's an artistry to it, and you're watching people's craft. You know,
Mhm.
it really is. It's such an amazing creative endeavor. I have to tell you, so I call it my daytime job is I'm a psychotherapist. And so
Oh,
I'm a trauma specialist. So like that's one of the things for me that has been like instrumental in my career. And I've been doing private practice for 15 years now. And like I used to, the first couple years in, I would listen to stand-up comedy like the whole time I'm getting ready, the whole time I'm on the way to work, because it was like this relief. It was like this magic that could get me
right.
into a certain state of being
Yes.
so that then I could, then you can kind of shoulder the weight of the world during the day.
Right. And this is what makes the most famous comedians, this is what makes them special because they can turn even a comedian back into a fan of comedy. There's certain performers who you watch them and you're a kid again, or you're just an onlooker and you're not thinking in the back of your head about your own job and, well, what would I have said during that part, or what would I have done with that heckler. That person takes you into a space where I get how other people feel about stand up on a regular basis, because it really is just it's a stress reliever. Not for me.
Yeah, it's a stress bringer for you.
I swear to you, Stephanie, when I'm on the cruise ships, there's two different type of shows that we have. We have family friendly shows and we have adult shows. Now, I'm not necessarily a dirty comedian. I just like to have the freedom to say whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
So the family friendly shows, imagine a sports car that has a governor on it. So it's set to go a certain amount of speed, but it'll never reach. And you can kind of tell, you almost want it to go faster. The audience wants you to push it, but they don't understand that pushing it could cost me my job. So I remember one time, even the most innocent thing, this man came to the stage and handed me a beer. He tried to hand me a beer on stage, not knowing that if I drank that beer on stage, that is a fireable offense for the family friendly show.
Wow.
So these are the type of little small stresses that audiences don't know. But long story short, I am typically in a complete sweat at the end of a family friendly show. It is nerve wracking. I just don't want to say the wrong thing. But it's like the duck on water. You see the duck looks smooth, but the legs are paddling like crazy. Like inside, I'm paddling like crazy, but they don't see that. They just see a wholesome comic.
But I can totally hear that, how that's, that you're just riding the edge that whole time.
Yes,
Just, yeah.
there's so much math that's happening live on stage. I imagine, and it's not like this guy who's on a computer and just typing in numbers. There's a guy in my head, and there's this giant ladder, and he's like moving little rocks like down a chute. Like that's how I'm counting. Like it is so much movement happening in my head, where there's a certain amount of time that you have to be on stage, right? So let's say you have 45 minutes. Every time someone in the audience interrupts you, heckles you, says something, well, I had a set amount of jokes that I was going to do in this time. Now I have to adjust. Now the amount of time I spend to you has to be taken from another joke, or I have to speed up another joke. And in your head, you're like, okay, which one am I going to do it with? What's going to happen? Am I going to change my closer? But all they're seeing is some guy talking to you. And they don't realize how disruptive. It's not just what he's saying. It disrupts the entire show. Now we're cutting and pasting the entire time. So that's really difficult. That's what makes it stressful for me on stage. The actual speaking part, that's nothing. It's the, I want to make sure I'm within my time frame part, because timing is everything for comics. Don't go over the light.
Yeah. And I am so feeling that. I'm a professional speaker as well. I'm not very funny. I mean, I'm maybe funny to myself, but that's not my purpose for being up there. And as you were talking, I'm imagining myself being on stage, and if someone was all of a sudden standing up and asking me a question, I would just lose my mind. I'm like, there's no way.
It is such a mental battle, Steph, because if what I did was called a one-man show, nobody would interrupt me. Nobody would say a word. When it's dancers and singers, people typically, they let you do your thing. When they hear the word stand-up comedy, there's a set amount of people in the world who are like, I should get drunk and say something right now. And they think they're helping. I don't know what it is, but if it was Alvin Williams, a one-man show, I wouldn't have to worry about any noise. And it's such a weird thing.
Well, so that's one of the things I want to see from you, in your future, the Alvin Williams one-man show. That'll be your next special.
Oh, that'd be incredible. That'd be fun. Yeah. That really would be fun. I find, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I find that I love a good pause. I love a good pause in between jokes or for dramatic effect. That's how I've always written. That's how I've always spoken. I take a little while to get to the point. So I need that in order to be my best version of me. But there are some places where that's just not going to happen. If you're at a bar doing a show, those pauses aren't going to come your way. Cruise ships, they're not. People aren't going to give you that. So it speeds you up a little bit, but you adjust and you learn. But yeah, I would love to do a one-man show one day.
Yeah. Well, that's on your horizon. We're going to have to take a quick break, but when we come back, more with comedian Alvin Williams, and we're going to be chatting a little bit with Alvin about the man and the child behind the comedian. So stay with us. We'll be right back. So welcome back to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James, and I'm just having an awesome conversation here with Alvin Williams. And Alvin and I share a mutual friend. Actually, he and I aren't personal friends. We're kind of over the internet friends, but he's been a friend and sounds like someone that you've almost like a mentor to you.
Yes.
Someone you've looked up to or followed his career. Tell me about, your experience with Dan Cummins.
Yeah, I first met Dan. Well, it's really, I saw him on television before I ever met him. I was with a friend of mine and we had his stand-up special on. It was too loud, I guess, because my friend has this amazing speaker system in her place, right? And I guess we were either laughing too hard or the stand-up itself was too loud, but we got a banging on the door from security. And yeah, it was awkward that they interrupted our whole deal. We were just having a good time, It's like this is comedy. They bang on the door for comedy. We weren't having a party, but it was really good. Like we laughed all the way through it. So fast forward 4 years later, I believe. I think the special was either in 05 or 06. So I meet him at a comedy club in Boise, Idaho. And at this point, I have done about 1.5 years to 2 years of stand-up. And I was excited to meet him and watch him live. And he was working on a new special. He was working on a new album. So he was doing something where, and this is where I learned to do it, whenever you're doing new material, he would do stuff that he had already done, but then in the middle of it, he had 20 minutes that he was trying out, like brand new. And he would do that every show. He had a new 20 minutes in each show that he was trying out. And I'm listening to this, I'm like, his new 20 is better than anything that I have. And it's like, he's just trying it out, right? So I'm backstage. Oh, I was hosting, by the way. So I'm backstage, and his notebook was open. So I just looked, and I saw what I had been doing wrong when it comes to memorizing my sets. My set list was I would write everything horizontal, like in order. I'd write it horizontal, and he does basic, the outline that you're supposed to do with the Roman numerals and the numbers. I forget what that's called in English class.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I know what your standard outline. Yeah.
Right. So he has the standard outline, but he had the amount of time in parentheses that each bit took, and it was so neatly organized. And I didn't know at the time that would help me, but I just started emulating that style. And the moment I started doing that, it was so easy for me to remember. And my sets got so much better because I wasn't lost on time, again, with the math, but I felt guilty that I had looked in his notebook for years. So I didn't tell him that until like 7 years later is when I told him that. But yeah, I ran into him a couple times after that. I was booking a show in North Idaho, and I practically begged him to come out, and it worked out perfect because he was just thinking about moving back to North Idaho. So he came and did the show and rocked the place. Then I moved to LA before he left LA, and he sat down and talked with me and gave me the lay of the land. And with all that said, he was like, I think I'm moving. I was like, I just got here. Like, no, you're supposed to help me. I'm supposed to do what you're doing. But he was just like, I've done LA. Like I've got my family, and I want to go back home. I'm like, but you have specials and albums, and you hosted the Playboy television show, and like you're heroic to me, and you're leaving. Like it didn't sit right in my head. And I was like, now why is he leaving this place? It didn't take me but 6 months to understand. It didn't fit his personality anymore. It wasn't who he was anymore. And that is a lesson that too many comics either learn too late or not at all. To not be afraid to change your act and how you present your act based on who you are now, not based on the success you had when you were a different person 5 years earlier. People change so much in our life, and a lot of comics just get pigeonholed and are scared to change what makes them successful because they don't feel like they could do it again. But you can absolutely do it again. It's about authenticity over anything.
Totally. And that's what I love. I love what you're saying, because it's you evolve as a person. And so how, amazing and wonderful that then your comedy evolves, right?
Right. It becomes so you go.
No, but I was just thinking, because it's like one of the questions I had for you, is thinking about like when you were in college, like what were you studying to be, or as a little boy? I mean, you're like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a comedian. I mean, what were your dreams then? And and then as it evolved to where you're at now.
Let me tell you something, Steph. I was really close to my childhood dream. I wanted to be an actor. That's what I wanted to be. And it was really small beginnings. This is how simple it is when you're a kid. There was this preschool that I went to called Yes I Can Learning Center in Chicago. And they had on the walls, you know how you have the alphabet and it was different animals, like A is for antelope, Y is for yak. But at this place, they had careers, so C was cop, F was fireman, but A was actor, like Alvin. And that's all it's, and there was a picture, she had a picture of Eddie Murphy from Beverly Hills Cop. And that's what I remember. And it was like A is for actor. And that became my safety word for me and my mom, in case like a stranger ever tried to pick me up or whatever. She said, if you're supposed to ask him what's the password or what's the safety word, and she had me choose the word, and I chose actor. So I always wanted to be an actor, and then I saw the Cosby Show, and this is a true story, and any of my family will tell you about it. They all got really excited on the Cosby Show because BB King was on it, and famous musician was on there, and they got so excited that he was on the, like, everybody, that's BB King, that's BB King. And so somebody asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was that age, and I said I wanted to be an actor like BB King. So that was an ongoing joke in my family for my entire childhood, all the way up until my 20s, was, do you still want to be an actor like BB King?
Oh, I love it. So you had the bug even back then. You know, I love how this whole actor thing. I mean, I love this, how it was, you know, it's like it became a part of who you were. I mean,
Yes.
Alvin, actor, the safe
Actor.
word. I mean, I just love this. And so when you went to college, were you going in acting? Were you going into acting, or what did you do?
No. When I went into college, my original major was accounting, like my dad, because there, and this shows you how different the world was. This was right before Enron happened, with the big scandal in AIG. There was always a job in accounting. That's what you're always told. Everybody needs an accountant. There's always a job in accounting. You're always safe there. So, you know, you get the safe job. There's Price Waterhouse Coopers. Like, it was all these places that had a bunch of accountants, just, or Arthur Anderson, like, you know, big accounting firms. So you always have a job. And then when that happened, the whole accounting field went down the tank. And that was right as I was getting into school, but I wanted to be an accountant like my dad, right? Fast forward 3 years later, I was not really into accounting. I didn't like it. It didn't speak to me. I remember I was in the room. This is after you do your prerequisite college courses, and you start taking the courses that are your major. I was sitting in the seat at my intermediate accounting class, and I just remember a voice in my head going, I don't want to be here. I just don't want to be here. And I walked out, and I failed accounting. I didn't go to class that whole year. And I was a straight A student in college. Up until my sophomore year, had a girlfriend, got a little distracted. That's all. It's me. It's not her fault. Like, it's, I was growing up, like my priorities shifted. And then I switched schools. I went from University of Idaho to University of Oregon, met the girlfriend in Oregon. Then I was just like an A and B student. And then I left University of Oregon to go to Louisiana State because it was cheaper. College was cheaper, and I could be near one of my brothers. And yeah, that was when I started taking the classes. Now my life, I was really starting to figure out who I was, and just couldn't quite piece it together for some reason why this accounting thing was making me miserable. And I just stopped going. I don't know what it was. Like, I went to my other classes. I started working at the Gap. I had a job at the Gap. I wasn't studying the way I was supposed to, and I freaking failed accounting. And I never failed anything. It was a very weird time in my life. Like, I realize now, like, mentally, I was rebelling against that because it was so not me.
Yeah.
And they told me, my guidance counselor told me, well, marketing is easier. if this doesn't speak to you, he's like, you can do marketing and you don't have to have as many credits, and it might be something that entertains you. Like, if you do sports marketing, you could become an agent one day. So I already thought to myself, I'm like, well, what if I could make commercials? That's part of marketing, and then I could make funny commercials. I wanted to do something like that. And I switched schools again, which I did a lot. And I went back to University of Idaho, where I first started. And I was a marketing major now. and they had something called the International Business Curriculum, where they make you do all the different courses, finance, and guess what? Accounting again. And I got an A in accounting this time. And I think it was more or less, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So when the pressure was off and I wasn't going to end up being an accountant, I could see better and feel better. And I started doing marketing. And my the marketing teacher that we had, the marketing professor there, his name was Mike McCullough, and I'll never forget this. My senior year, he asked us what we wanted to do with marketing. And I raised my hand and I said, well, I want to make commercials. And he said, okay, well, people have TiVo and they fast forward through the commercials. So maybe you want to try something else. He said that in front of the whole class. It was embarrassing. It was an actor like BB King moment again, BB King.
Yeah,
Like that's,
ouch.
I was humiliated. And I was just like, oh, that hurt a lot, you know? And again, I was back to not knowing what I wanted to do. But I ended up getting a marketing internship in Boise. And that was the conversation that I went back to with my friend at the sushi restaurant, because we were just thinking about our lives and what we were going to do. And that's when the stand-up part happened again. It was all happenstance. It was like, what makes you happy? Comedy makes me happy. I'd like to see that. That would be cool. But I never thought that I would do it as a profession. That was just something I was doing to take my mind off of the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Wow. Well, I mean, the serendipity of that is so awesome, and I love you said this earlier about, we can manifest things in our lives, and it was almost like that search that you were on to find like what really is meaningful for me. I think there's that part that like it can feel so honorable. Like, yeah, I want to do what my dad did and be like dependable, and I want to be solid. And then it's like, okay, well,
yes,
that I can admire that and honor that and still be like, well, what speaks to my soul? And so then you kind of went on that journey, and then it was like, there it was.
And this is the best part to me was I had this conversation with my father later down the line, because I realized the reason that I was having such a hard time was I was trying to meet other people's expectations. And I didn't know how to break away. I didn't realize that voice that I had back then is the same one that I have now. And I definitely let it guide me now. When I hear it, when something's not right, it's like, okay, you've never let me down before. Like something's not right. I gotta change something. And I was telling my dad about this, and he was like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's why I went into business management instead of marketing, or instead of accounting, because it just didn't feel right. But I did business management instead. That was better for me. And I said, well, time out. You weren't an accounting major? He said, no, I was like the first 2 years of school, but just didn't feel right. What? Like, why did you? I was like, why did you tell me? Otherwise, he was like, well, there's always a job in accounting. Yeah, that's what you said my entire childhood. I didn't know. Like he neglected to mention that he went through the same thing. That would have helped.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank God for your friend, a night of sushi and sake. And, I'm so glad it ended up where it is. We got to take one more break, and then we're going to be back for this incredible, just so fun conversation with Alvin Williams. So stay tuned.
Yeah, when he said that, it really did show me, you really can't live your life trying to please other people, because you don't know what those other people, like where their mind is. You think you're doing something because this is what they always wanted. Like, I mean, Michael Jordan played baseball because that's what his dad always wanted. But Michael Jordan was meant to play basketball. You know what I mean? Right. So sometimes we get caught in these traps of trying to meet people's expectations, and in the middle of that, you miss the mark entirely. I mean, a lot of times they don't even want that for you.
Well, and how have your parents been with your career in comedy?
I will say, and I almost feel guilty about it, if that makes any sense. I have never once run into any interference with either one of them. They never, ever stopped me from following my dream. They never once said anything to the contrary. And it's so rare in my community. There's so much trauma and abuse in the history of most comedians, and that's where a lot of the funny comes from. It's a defense mechanism. Never forget that the funniest people, they're so quick and witty, but it's a defense mechanism. It's disarming other people so that they can't harm you. That's the genesis of it. And how you choose to channel that, you can make it positive, but never forget that it's a defense mechanism to make those around you comfortable so that you yourself can feel some sense of comfortability. So that's what the gist of it is. So when you learn how to master that, it can be fun, but at its core, a lot of the funniest people come from the worst situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that with, Jim Carrey. I remember, that story with him and, growing up and how he's dealt with lifelong depression. So for you, I mean, you are like this happy, awesome light, of a soul. And I'm like, and I don't know, maybe you did go through lots of, horrible, hard things.
I did, and a lot of it, to be honest, a lot of it was self-inflicted. A lot of it was self-sabotaging. That it really has been a struggle for me. I have a lot of addictive behaviors, which when I channel it all into my work, when I channel it all into stand-up, the results become exponential, but I can develop this tunnel vision. But overeating, gambling, women, like shopping, I'm a compulsive shopper. So I found that the biggest one for me was women. The biggest one for me was women because that, or eating and alcohol, these are all things that are legal, but if done in excess, they can be terrible for you. They can be just as damaging as any drug or any type of violent act, because it's socially acceptable to do these things, you tend to not see that you're in trouble until it's too late. But what I found was, you don't have to be a womanizer for this to be a problem in your life. If you put everything into one person and you ignore everything else around you, that's just as damaging as any drug. And nobody has to make you do it. Nobody has to be manipulative for you to do it. You can be just a super loving person, but if you are so loving that you're just putting all of your love and your hopes and dreams and fears into this person, thinking, well, I'm just loving them, I just love them so much, it almost becomes an addiction of itself if you don't have balance. So that's what I ran into a lot. I found that the biggest spirals that I've had have mirrored when relationships don't work out. And that took me a long time to figure out about myself, is to watch that in myself, because it becomes a trap if I don't pay attention, because I fly off the handle as far as like my health and what I care about real quick when a relationship doesn't go well. And it could be a good thing that it's ended, but you don't see it that way at the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So how
So
did
those
you
are
learn?
the type of things. But
Yeah. Well, so Alvin, how did you learn then to because this is something that I write about and I think about, this whole thing of like how we can truly learn. We've all heard like that phrase, like, oh, just love yourself, be your own best friend, but there's really, and I know, like 33 years in my, personal development and mental health field, it's not that easy. So it's like,
Mhm.
how do we cultivate that relationship with ourselves? Because that's the essential piece. Like I'm hearing you
Right.
say, like, we got to have some equanimity in our lives and not just have it poured into one person. How did you find that for yourself?
I still, it's like anything else, one day at a time, right? So I still fall into those traps. When I do fall in love, I fall hard. But the flip side of that is then I become defensive. Then I don't want to fall in love. Then I don't want to meet people. Like if somebody gets too close, all of a sudden I'm pushing them away. And everything was about me not having boundaries that I trusted. One of my friends always told me that I need to build better boundaries as far as what I accept from people, what I expect from people, and what I expect from myself when dealing with other people. And once the boundaries are set, you have the guidelines as far as how to maneuver through these people, because especially in entertainment, you will find yourself close to so many of the wrong people just because they're there, and you don't want to be alone when you're out there and traveling, and it can become a lonely existence. So you tend to fill that space with people who don't necessarily deserve that space in your life. I found that once I established my boundaries better, I didn't mind being alone as much if I know this person isn't good to be in my circle. I had somebody who was my best friend for 13 years, and he turned out to not be what I thought that he was. But he had been that same person the entire time. I was just too busy, doing my thing and living my life to pay attention to this person isn't necessarily a good influence in your life. And that was my best friend, at the time. But having these boundaries and not allowing yourself to be mishandled or manipulated or mistreated, he was never my best friend. You know what I mean? Like it was just I wasn't paying attention. And there were people in my life who were great friends to me who I was either ignoring or just not respecting enough to listen to them, where they're a big part of my life now, and my life is so much better and so much more fulfilling because I have the right people there when I'm being successful. I have the right people there sharing in my success. When I'm down, I have the right people there lifting me up. So even when you're on this journey of finding yourself and making yourself full, it takes a lot of um, the right type of people to be in your life for those moments where you don't just feel like being alone and being by yourself. I don't know if that is clear
Yeah,
or
no,
not.
no, that's awesome and it's beautiful. And I think, when you're talking about boundaries, part of what I'm hearing is, that part of where you had to learn how to trust yourself to have those
Yes.
boundaries, to
Yes.
have the right people in your life and to end the friendships that weren't serving you or that weren't healthy, and that always reminds me of, when we're growing literally a relationship with ourselves. It's just like if you
Hmm.
meet someone new and you have one nice conversation with them, it's not like you're telling them like your deepest, darkest secrets. And you're like, hey, by the way, you want to pick up my kid from daycare tomorrow?
Right.
I mean, we just don't do that, right? I mean, so it
Right.
takes a while to build trust. And the same is true with a relationship with ourselves. It's like we've got to kind of cultivate it. Like we show up for ourselves over and over and over. Like every time you showed yourself, you're showing yourself, I have a boundary. I have I'm going to be mindful about who I'm hanging out with. Oh, I'm enjoying actually hanging out with myself. All right.
Right. And I promise you, Steph, there was a time in my life, I'd say maybe 3 years ago, uh, I was scared of me.
Hmm.
I was scared of me being alone. Um, I call it being unsupervised. I
I love that.
just, I was so impulsive all the time. I just didn't know what I was going to do next. And I shared that with one of my friends who, she's in my life now, Joanna Stringer. She's a wife of one of my best friends in comedy. Now we're brothers, but this is like, she's like the sister that I never had, right? So we're just super tight, and she knows the type of like fears that I have when I'm just like on my own, and she checks in every now and again, just to make sure, like, even now, even though I think I have a lot of it figured out, she still checks in, to make sure I'm okay. Like, just a case in point, because this happened yesterday. I don't know if you know this. Like, it's been a long time since I've been on land. It's been about 7 months since I've been on land, and I was in a place where the security cameras are on you 24/7. You always have somebody watching you. Everybody on the ship knows who you are. So it's the parameters are there. There's nothing I can do. And the first thing I did was I went to Cold Stone Creamery and got the biggest bowl of ice cream. They have the like it, love it, gotta have it, like somebody should help. And I just had to have it. And I got it to go because somehow I felt like I would eat less if I'm not still in the ice cream shop. And they had the to-go order of the ice cream, and they put 4 spoons in there. And I'm like, now this is just for me. The 4 spoons hurt my feelings. And because either you're implying I should share, or I'm alone when I'm eating this, and this is just funny to you that you have the other spoons. I'm gonna use them all.
Yes, I love it.
I'm driving back to the hotel with my Cold Stone, and all of a sudden, like, I get the urge to have McDonald's, and I damn near Tokyo drifted into McDonald's parking lot, and I'm in the drive-through, and I was ordering the McDonald's, and I called her. I was like, hey, I miss you, and I'm doing the thing. Like, how you have triggers? That's one of the triggers. It all starts with overeating or over shopping. And now I'm in danger of doing it all because I'm out in Orlando, I'm driving to Miami, I've got all these shops, I've got money, and I've got time. And she was like, hey, just so you know, like, I've had 3 whole pizzas in 3 different days. She's like, I can't help you stop doing what you're doing, but I just want you to know, like, we'll be okay.
That's awesome.
She told me, don't beat yourself up. You're making up for lost time, but just come back to the middle when you can. And again, if I was doing this by myself, I'd feel sad. I'd be like, well, I'd probably do it again the next day. Who knows when it would stop? But just having the right person who knows you and being able to share when you're vulnerable, like, hey, I'm just overeating and I'm scared this is going to lead to other bad behaviors. Like, just, other people would laugh at you, to a certain extent and not take you seriously. But she knows I'm being dead serious. Like, there's only the beginning. So, like, let's just stop it. Let's just stop it here. That was fun, but we're good. Just be cool. And
Reel
I
me
think
in.
that support system. Yes, that support system is everything to me. So, my advice to anybody out there, have a support system that you trust. And when you begin to trust yourself, you begin to establish those boundaries, that the people who got in, typically, they're the right people if you have your boundaries set up right. So you can then be relieved and trust in your group that you have around. Do your best. Just do your best.
Yeah, love that. And I just love, thank you, Alvin. God, your transparency is just so fun, and just, it's so refreshing and awesome. And I know that's one of the things that I had read about you is, you talk about in your comedy things that are just like real life, like everything you just talked about right then. there's that kind of tragic, if you will, part to it. And yet this
Yes.
hilarious part to it that I think part of what makes it, things funny, I think is because we can identify with them.
Right.
Like the people in your
Right.
audience, like we've all gone through that experience. My partner and he and I did the 75 hard, where you're working out twice a day and you don't drink alcohol for 75 days and you don't, you eat good food, and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, and we get done with that, and it was December. And then we just lose our minds for a month, and we're like, what has
You're like, I
happened?
earned this.
We're like driving down the road, and this is the truth. We're driving down the road to my grandson's birthday party yesterday with a pack
Mhm.
of cookie dough in the car in between us. And I'm like, what has happened to us?
I promise you, the pain, I feel that pain. Look, I remember one time I was just getting into taking care of my body, and I was dating a girl at the time, and she was really good about this, because I thought that I always wanted to work on myself, right? But for some reason I couldn't stick to it. And she said to me, she said, don't worry about it. Like, eat what you want, do what you want, until you feel like you're ready to make a change. Like, I will never push you to eat like me or do what I'm doing. And that made me feel comfortable. And we did a challenge together where we decided no meat for a month. We ate vegetarian for a month just to see the effects. And when I tell you, I took to it like a fish to water. It was nothing. It was easy for me. I had so much energy and I felt amazing. And we're like, yeah, see, should I be a trainer one day? Like, this is so easy for me. And so the next month we're like, all right, well, the next challenge, we're gonna give up sweets. I didn't make it 2 days. I wanted to fight everybody. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. So believe me, I understand the cookie dough in the car. Like, there's some things I could give up meat, couldn't give up red vines.
Give up red meat, but not the red vines. I get
Yeah.
it.
That was perfect. Perfect.
So, Alvin, I can't believe that we're already to the end of our time together. This has just been so much fun and so wonderful. And I would love to have you back on the show again, because there's so much we didn't get to talk about. I want to make sure, though, that number one, people can check out your awesome special. It's going to get better. And we talked about that on Amazon, and gosh, you're going to have to say all the other places, Amazon Prime.
Yeah, Apple TV, YouTube, Google Play.
Awesome.
I think that's it.
Awesome. Yes. Check it out. It's hilarious and fun. And then, are you on a tour now? Are you going right to tour?
It's funny. I just got off of the ship. I'm headed to Idaho again. I do something called Moscow Comedy Night. I'll be up there this weekend in Moscow, Idaho, back where the University of Idaho campus is, on the 22nd. And then I go to Laughs Comedy Cafe in Tucson, Arizona on the 28th and the 29th. And then I will probably be back out to sea in February on Holland America, if everything holds up. So we'll see.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Alvin, thank you so much. Thanks for being a guest here on The Spark. Loved having you here.
Oh, my pleasure. You are an absolute joy. I can't wait to do it again.
Thanks for tuning in to The Spark with Stephanie James. Remember that you already have what you need to live a life that is fully lit and fully alive. You're already holding the flame. Now it's time to ignite your best life. Learn more at stephaniejames.world. That's stephaniejames.world. And tune in next week at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on transformationtalkradio.com. Shine on!